AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk,
Thunder wins, Sooners lose. That has pretty much been our theme throughout the basketball season. So we're going to talk about those two things. And then one week away from the start of the college softball season. And we got some more thoughts on that as we look at Oklahoma's 15-game road trip to start the season. Why and how do they benefit from that? Welcome to the Sooner Nation podcast. Let's start with the good. Let's start with Thunder basketball because, there are nights in basketball when the game it doesn't care who you think you are. It doesn't care about your record. It doesn't care about your offensive identity. It doesn't care about your spacing, your ball movement, or how clean things usually look when everything is working. What it does is it's going to resist you. And how a team responds to that resistance tells you far more than any blowout win or loss, for that matter, ever could. And that's what Oklahoma City learned in a 104-95 win over New Orleans on Wednesday night. Tuesday night. A game that refused to cooperate from the opening tip and it forced the Thunder to answer a question that they don't really get asked very often. What happens when nothing flows? This wasn't a night for aesthetics. It wasn't a night for highlights. It wasn't a night where the Thunder looked like the smoothest, smartest, most connected team in the league. It was a night where they had to choose between frustration and discipline. And that choice is why I think this win over the Pelicans mattered. Because coming into this game, Oklahoma City wasn't just dealing with a sluggish offense or missing rotation piece. They were dealing with the quiet type of doubt, back-to-back losses. They'll do that to you. Not panic, not crisis, but just subtle tension that creeps in when your usual advantages stop showing up. The Thunder have built their identity on control, pace, decision-making, collective rhythm, and when you take that away, when shots don't fall, when spacing tightens, when lineups thin out, you find out how real your identity actually is. And against New Orleans, the Thunder didn't find something new. They learned what was already there. And there's a distinction that really does matter. SGA finishes 29 points, but this wasn't a masterclass in shot making. He missed more than he made. He didn't glide through the defense the way that we were used to seeing him do. This was a grindy performance, the kind where your jumper betrays you and you have to decide whether you're going to drift or apply pressure. SGA chose pressure. 13 free throws, relentless downhill attacks, a refusal to let this game slip into chaos just because the offense wasn't clean. And there's a difference between inefficiency and indecision, and SGA never wavered in that. That's leadership without the theatrics. This was, the 118th straight game where he scored 20 or more points? And someday that number will be framed historically. But the way he got there on this night, on Tuesday night, I think that matters more than the streak itself. This wasn't about scoring volume. It was about control. When SGA was on the floor, Oklahoma City didn't rush. They didn't spiral. They didn't give the game away. Instead, they managed it. And that theme, management, it showed up everywhere. Because if SGA controlled the tempo, Chet controlled the geometry of the floor. I mean, look, his line. 20 points, 14 rebounds, 5 blocks. But that's not the story. The story is the deterrence. The story is how New Orleans stopped believing in certain shots altogether. The Pelicans shot 34% from the field. That doesn't happen by accident. We're talking about professional athletes. Holmgren erased angles, honestly, before they were even able to get formed. He forced drives to hesitate. He collapsed secondary actions before they became advantages. And Zion Williamson, he's a guy we called out on the breakdown. He got his points. He did what we thought he would do going into this game. But even his touches came further from the rim than what New Orleans wanted. And as you are into almost February, you start thinking about playoff basketball. That's the kind of play and the type of building with the type of philosophy that's going to matter in April, May, and June. Chet didn't just protect the rim. He protected the structure of this game. And structure is what separate Oklahoma City from New Orleans on a night where really neither team played particularly well. Because if you look at the raw stats, there's nothing really comforting there if you're an Oklahoma City fan. The Thunder shot 40%. They were out-rebounded. They didn't dominate possession count. They were shorthanded once again. So by traditional measures, this was a game that they should have not felt comfortable with. They certainly didn't have a chance to feel comfortable winning. But basketball games, they don't live in traditional measures anymore. They live in margins where there's turnovers and free throws and shot quality, late game execution. And Oklahoma City owned all of those. Just 9 turnovers for the entire game. A massive free throw edge where they made 21 of 23. A true shooting percentage that quietly separated them from New Orleans despite similar struggles to the Pelicans from the field. This wasn't a game that the Thunder outplayed New Orleans. It was a game where they outmanaged the Pelicans. And that's the kind of win that contenders like collecting as you get into late January, because when the game tightened late, when New Orleans cut the lead and the building got uneasy, Oklahoma City didn't press. They didn't hunt hero shots. They didn't try to reclaim flow that wasn't there. What they did was they slowed the game down defensively. Lou Dort nailed a 3, just over 3 minutes left in the game. But it wasn't about scoring. It was about punctuation. It told New Orleans the window was closing. It told the Thunder they don't need perfection to finish this game. Even that late game scuffle, I don't like it. I just don't like it. But still, there's that edge, that there's this physicality, this emotion about protecting who they are. It felt revealing. Oklahoma City wasn't playing to lose. They were playing territorial, protecting ground that had felt shakier than it usually does. And there's an edge there. I don't like the scuffle, but that edge matters because championship teams, they're not defined by how often they dominate. They're defined by how rarely they unravel. And this was a game that invited unraveling. The missing rotation pieces, the cold shooting, a physical opponent, the recent 2-game skid. And Oklahoma City never lost its balance. It never lost its center. And another guy that we probably don't talk about enough, but Isaiah Joe, he mattered. His shooting wasn't for volume, but really for oxygen. Jalen Williams, that's a guy who mattered in minutes when Chet was on the bench resting. Obviously, Dort mattered in moments, not stretches, but in moments. So this wasn't a game about one hero stepping up. It was about the floor staying high. I think that's the real takeaway here. The Thunder didn't win because they were brilliant. They won because their habits held when conditions deteriorated. Free throws, turnover discipline, defensive integrity, shot selection, particularly late. So those are traits that travel. Minnesota, right? Those are traits that survive playoff adjustments. Those are traits that matter when April, again, turns into May. This game, it's not going to be remembered externally. It won't be replayed. It won't make montages. But internally, within that locker room, this is the kind of win that stabilizes a season. Because Oklahoma City isn't a finished product. We want them to be because they're the defending champs, but they're not a finished product. And the guys that aren't playing right now, those absences, they matter. The thin stretches, they're going to matter. And there are nights when the offense is going to look fragile. So there are matchups that will stress their depth. But this game confirmed, what it confirmed is something more, I think, important than style. This team can win without beauty. They can accept discomfort. They can manage limitations. They can close without momentum. And when you've got a league where everybody can score, everybody can shoot, and everybody can look dangerous on the right night, I think the most dangerous teams that come out of that are the ones that don't panic when the game refuses to cooperate with them. So the Thunder didn't discover something new against New Orleans. They confirmed what they already suspected, that when the margins tighten, when the rhythm disappears, when the game gets heavy, they're still standing. And that's not just encouraging for fans. That is foundational for another championship run.
Every sip of Coca-Cola brings you closer to the excitement of the FIFA World Cup 26. Because nothing compares to the joy. So grab a Coke and drink in the FIFA World Cup 26. No purchase necessary. 13 plus in 50 U.S. states and D.C. with a web-enabled device. Ends March 1st with 8 entry periods. Rules at cokeurl.com/soccerrules.
Well, now we get to make the transition from championship basketball to this current version of Oklahoma basketball, coming off another disappointing loss. And look, there are losses that just feel unlucky. There are those frustrating losses. And I feel like we talk about these two things a lot. Then there are losses that you feel like you can explain. Oklahoma City's lost to Arkansas on Tuesday night, 83-79. It wasn't random and it wasn't cruel. It was just clarifying because the seventh straight time, the Sooners walked off the floor having done enough things right to feel competitive and enough things wrong to make the outcome predictable. I mean, at some point, that stops being coincidence. It becomes the structure of who you are. And when we look at this game, you start with the stat that matters the most because everything else spirals out from this. 56-30. That's the points in the paint. That was Arkansas's advantage over Oklahoma. The Hogs scored 56 points at the rim at Lloyd Noble Center while shooting just 2 for 17 from three-point range. In modern college basketball, that should be a losing formula. You force a ranked team into 11% shooting from deep, you protect your home court, and you take your resume win. But Oklahoma did none of those things. Not because Arkansas got hot, but because Arkansas just went exactly where Oklahoma couldn't stop them. So this wasn't a hot shooting night for Arkansas. This wasn't a heavy-laden foul night. It wasn't a problem with a young basketball team. This was just one team attacking another team's weakness that it knew was there and couldn't be defended. Arkansas didn't stumble into the paint. The Hogs lived there. It turned every defensive position into a downhill decision that Oklahoma couldn't answer. Blow-bys at the point of attack, late help rotations, no consistent rim deterrence, no physical response once the Razorbacks decided the game would be played inside the arc. And here's the part that should make everyone just not even uncomfortable anymore, just straight frustrated. This has been happening to Oklahoma all season. This wasn't the first time. It wasn't the loudest time. Oklahoma actually did a lot of things well in this game, and that's what makes it so frustrating. The Sooners had a good night from three-point range. They won the rebounding battle. They were solid at the free throw line. They posted an offensive rating north of 113. Again, that's good enough to win most home games, yet Arkansas finished with an offensive rating close to 120. So that gap, maybe it doesn't sound enormous until you understand what it represents. It represents possession level control. Arkansas maximized its trips. Oklahoma survived on variance. When one team shoots 72% on 2-point attempts, math is going to stop working in your favor. That's not about shot making. That's about shot selection and defensive permission. This is where you kind of look at advanced metrics, and I love that, but they stop being abstract and just start being brutally honest. Arkansas committed just 6 turnovers all night long. Oklahoma doubled that up. Sooners had 12. That's 6 extra empty possessions, 6 chances where Arkansas didn't even have to defend. And those possessions, they mattered particularly late in this game when Oklahoma needed just 1 or 2 stops to flip the game. Those stops, they never arrived. Why? Because Arkansas didn't panic. It didn't hunt threes. It didn't rush. It kept going back to the same action, to the same space, to the same advantage. And Oklahoma never had the ability to take that away. It's not about effort. It's about identity. It is who you are. And it showed up most clearly in the moments when the game tightened. Think about this. A minute 30 left. Oklahoma leads 79-77. The Sooners didn't score again. That's not bad luck. That's not officiating. That's not, again, a young ball player making a mistake. That's just execution or the lack of it. It's revealing itself under pressure. Now, Arkansas had a freshman, Darius Acuff Jr. He didn't flinch. He attacked the rim. He absorbed contact. He finished a 3-point play and then trusted the structure that's around him. He finished the night with 9 assists and 0 turnovers in a hostile environment. Meanwhile, Oklahoma's final possessions, they were hurried, they were predictable, they were reactive. And that's the difference between hoping and knowing. And it's where I think the conversation has to get uncomfortable, because this is no longer a team that's trying to gel together. You can't use that explanation anymore. This is a roster that has veterans. It has experienced guards. It has players who have been in late game situations before, and yet when games reach the final 4 minutes, Oklahoma consistently looks like a team waiting for something to happen instead of making something happen. That is not personnel, guys. That's design. And Porter Moser, to his part, he's acknowledged the issue. He's talked openly about perimeter breakdowns cascading into interior problems, and he's not wrong. But awareness without correction stops being insight and really starts becoming indictment. 7 SEC games, that's a large enough sample to say this clearly. Oklahoma does not currently have an answer for physical teams that attack downhill. And in this conference, that's not a minor flaw. That's a fatal flaw. What makes this loss, I think, even heavier than the rest of them is that it's not the score, it's the setting. Lloyd Noble showed up. Now, you give Sooner fans free tickets, they're suddenly basketball fans. But they showed up. The crowd was there. Arkansas was vulnerable. And the Razorbacks handed Oklahoma every opportunity to steal a signature win despite shooting miserably from outside. And Oklahoma still couldn't close. That's when the narrative begins to shift here, right? Early in the season, close losses, they build belief. In late January, they just build resentment, internally and externally. I don't think there was very many fans walked out of Lloyd Noble on Tuesday night surprised with what they saw. And these type of losses, they absolutely don't help your resume, right? They don't improve perception, and they don't magically turn into wins later down the road. All they do is they just stack up, and we're 7 deep. Oklahoma sits 1-7 in conference play, winless against ranked opponents, with a net ranking that's drifting into the low 50s and a shrinking margin for error. And I think here's the most important question coming out of Tuesday night. You can't dodge it. We have to address it. What does Oklahoma basketball actually hang its hat on right now? Defense? No, not in the paint. Toughness? Well, not at the rim. Late game poise? There is evidence that says absolutely not. And so until that question has a real answer, games like this, they're not going to feel surprising. They're just going to feel familiar. And that's the most troubling part of it all. Because Arkansas, they didn't beat Oklahoma with luck. They beat Oklahoma with clarity. It knew where the game would be decided. It knew Oklahoma could not protect inside the paint. And it never went away from that. The numbers, they didn't just explain this loss, they actually predicted it. And until the structure changes, not the emotion, not the messaging, not the margin, until the structure changes, the outcomes of these games aren't going to change either. That's not criticism just for criticism's sake. That's just the truth. The truth is that the paint keeps telling us, right? All right, so let's close out with some happy thoughts because guess what? Softball, if you're listening to this on Thursday, the 29th of January, when I'm recording it, we are a week away, not a month, a week away from the start of the college softball season. And man, if you're looking for comfort in Oklahoma softball season, you're not really going to find it in the schedule. Again, not an oversight here. That's just the point. Sooners going to go to Tempe, Tucson, Las Cruces, Cathedral City. That's 4 cities. 4 different stress tests, no early game in Norman, no soft landings, no chance to ease into rhythm before the questions start coming. This is it's not a non-conference schedule that's designed to protect a ranking. It's designed to expose a team internally, repeatedly, and early. And that tells us pretty much everything that we need to know about where Oklahoma softball is right now. For more than a decade, this program could afford comfort. It could schedule conservatively, stack wins, and still arrive in Oklahoma City prepared to compete for a national championship. The brand itself carried weight. The roster carried margin. The postseason felt like it was just a sure bet. But 2026, it's not about a sure bet. It's about definition. The 4-year national championship run ended last season. The SEC transition erased the margin for error. Program defining stars graduated, and the postseason, it reminded everyone, including us Oklahoma fans, that reputation doesn't hit elite pitching. Patty Gasso, she didn't respond by pulling back and pushing away from that. She actually responded by pushing forward. And what Oklahoma is doing in February is something that only elite programs dare to do. Chase adversity before it's forced upon you, not as a punishment, but as preparation. This season opens in Tempe against Arizona State, and don't mistake that for just a warm-up game. That's a road environment. That is a veteran roster, an elite ace in Kinsey Brown, a staff that's shaped by one of the sharpest pitching minds in the country. February softball is where pitchers dictate pace, and offense has to earn everything. Now, Arizona State's not expected to out-talent Oklahoma, but that's irrelevant. What matters is disruption. Brown can slow this game down. She can test patience. She can force hitters to grind through at-bats that don't really go their way. And in an opener, that is invaluable. Early games against elite pitching, they're not about scoreboard. They're about exposure. Who on this roster, who in the lineup, who presses, who makes the adjustment? Who stays within themselves when the plan breaks down? Oklahoma wants those answers immediately. And then, once they get those, they're going to go off to Tucson. If Tempe kind of is a warning shot, Arizona, the Wildcats in Tucson, that's a statement. 3-game series at Hillenbrand Stadium in February. It's not something contenders really seek out. It's something that they endure. Arizona doesn't rely on just one arm. It doesn't give away innings. It doesn't flinch when momentum shifts. The Wildcats force complete softball. And for Oklahoma, that means there's nowhere to hide. Pitching depth gets tested. Defensive communication gets tested. Lineup flexibility gets tested. Emotional discipline, guess what? It gets tested. So this is going to be February softball. That feels like June. And Patty Gasso knows exactly what that will reveal. After Tucson, though, schedule doesn't soften. It just changes shape. The Sooners are off to the New Mexico tournament. It doesn't carry the same national profile as what's happening in Arizona, but internally, I think this might be the most revealing stop of all, because you've got 4 games in 2 days, multiple opponents, minimal recovery time, and you got altitude. That's kind of a silent variable. I mean, when you're playing at a higher altitude, breaking balls, they flatten. Mistakes definitely travel. Mechanics get exposed. And so for pitchers still settling into rhythm, that's going to be maybe a gift. And this is where Oklahoma's pitching hierarchy starts to take form. You got Sidney Person, you got Miley Gauchi, they arrive with expectations, but behind them, you've got a crowded but talented room. Kirsten Deal, Audrey Lowry, Alyssa Parker, Berkeley Zake. 4 games, 2 days, that's going to force clarity. Who handles short rest? Who thrives in relief? Who loses command? Who responds to coaching adjustments? This is the lab. This is where it's all sorted out. This is where the experiments take place. And it's not just about arms. They're going to play Minnesota. In New Mexico. They're going to play Minnesota. I got to make sure I clarify that. And look, that's going to provide a legitimate measuring stick. Idaho State will be there. That offers the classic trap game. You got a veteran team with nothing to lose and everything to gain from every mistake that you make. So those are games where focus and maturity are going to matter more than talent. And then once the Sooners get through the New Mexico gauntlet, off to Cathedral City, easy for you to say. Look, by the time Oklahoma reaches the Mary Nutter, fatigue, it's already going to be a part of the equation. And again, that's intentional because Mary Nutter, it's not dangerous because of any single opponent. It's dangerous because of volume. The variety that's there, the pace of play. You got 6 games. You're going to have different styles. You're going to have morning starts. You're going to have night finishes. No home crowd, no rhythm to lean on. This is controlled chaos. And it's where adaptability kind of gets revealed. It's where hitters, they have to adjust quickly. And so which players in your lineup are going to be doing that 4 weeks into the season? Which pitchers are going to handle rapid scouting shifts? Which defenders stay sharp after a long day? Which freshman understands the moment? And so that puts players like Kia Minor, Kendall Wells, Alyssa Parker, Lexi McDaniel. This is for them. This is going to be the real introduction to Oklahoma softball. Not the fall season, not highlight moments, but real pressure against real opponents with real noise, with real fatigue, facing real consequences. History tells us that at least one of these freshmen is going to rise faster than expected. Mary Nutter is where you can typically bank on something like that happening. And when you look at the whole landscape here, Tempe, Tucson, Las Cruces, Cathedral City, the common thread, it never changes. Right? This is stress without elimination. That's an advantage that elite programs chase. Early adversity gives you permission to experiment, to fail, to adjust, to move players defensively, to shuffle lineups, and to test rotations. And by the time conference play arrives, those mistakes, they've got to be solved. That's what this 15-game stretch does for Oklahoma. That's how championships are built. They're not protected, but built. If Oklahoma runs this gauntlet undefeated, fine. If it takes losses, you know what? That's fine as well. What matters is the identity on the other side of that. Does this team grind? Do they communicate? Do they respond to momentum swings? Do they stay composed when their plan breaks down? Those are the questions that can't be answered in March blowouts. They have to be answered before you get to conference play. And they can only be answered in environments that don't really care what logo is on your jersey. And that brings us, I think, to the bigger picture here. The most important shift in Oklahoma softball right now, it's not tactical, it's philosophical. This program is no longer chasing history. They're defining relevance. And that requires a large measure of honesty, self-awareness, and a willingness to let the game tell you the truth early. Patty Gasso understands that. She understands that banners don't win at bats, that rankings don't block pitches, that dynasties, they don't survive only on memory. The desert doesn't care about any of that. What it does is it strips you down, it tests you, and it tells you exactly who you are. So as we start 2026, Oklahoma softball, it didn't avoid that reality. They chose it. And that's why this schedule matters far more than the record that it's going to produce, because identity forged in February, it will last a lot longer than comfort ever would. That's the Sooner Nation podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us. Make sure you look us up online, heartland-sports.com. Find us on Facebook. We're almost to 17,000. Very soon, I'm going to tell you we're over 17,000. Subscriber content. If you like Oklahoma softball, look at our subscriber content, breaking down everything you want to know as we prepare for this season opener on Thursday. It's all there. Almost 30 articles and growing on our 2026 Oklahoma softball preview. Thanks so much for hanging with us. Make sure you subscribe and like wherever you're picking up the Sooner Nation podcast. Enjoy your weekend. Boomer Sooner.
But I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more to be the man who walked 1,000 miles to fall down at your door. When I'm walking, yes, I know I'm gonna be the man who's working hard for you.